Book 1, Chapter 1 of the Institutes, the knowledge of God and of ourselves mutually connected. Thank you for hanging with me. I know 8 or whatever videos of 5 minutes or more seems like a lot to just get through the introductory material. I think that was helpful for the setup. So the knowledge of God and of ourselves mutually connected. You see that heading and you ask yourself, why? What exactly is Calvin thinking? Well, he has essentially 3 sections that he'll cover in this chapter. And what you need to understand is Calvin has essentially 2 main categories that he would generally subdivide all knowledge into: knowledge of God and knowledge of self. And he would say these are so interconnected that at points it's hard to differentiate where something is coming from in terms of the dispensation of knowledge that a man has, in a chicken or the egg kind of thing. Obviously, he would answer it's God was here first because he's creator and sustainer. But he has some interesting lines about the manner in which the knowledge of God brings about a conscientiousness, an awareness, an initial leading and urging and seeking to in some sense, find God. He says that man, upon examining and as objectively as he can, if a man comes honestly and says, I'm going to consider what I am, very, very often he is stung by the consciousness in himself of his own unhappiness. Calvin's going to go on to connect the dots of living apart from God. And for a guy who's known for predestination and election, he says very insightful things about what we would say is a well-developed psychology of human consciousness, psyche, self-awareness, and self-understanding. He says basically a man who seeks to deeply know himself will become restless in himself with this urge and being unconsciously moved at some level by his own self-knowledge as one made in the image of God. That's why that's happening. If we weren't made in the image of God, self-reflection wouldn't lead us to consideration of God. But since we are made in God's image, it does. And a man, conscientious, self-aware of his own makeup and who he is moved restlessly in some sense to be urged to seek. And Calvin would use the language of it's as though he's in his own self-awareness, he's dived as deep as he can. He's now being led by the hand to seek and find God. When he does this, what's the problem with what he finds? That we have a moral and spiritual vision problem. When we begin to behold the majesty of God in our own conscious awareness as made in his image, when we begin to see it with our intellectual understanding, when we begin to see it unveiled in nature, what do we begin to see and understand? That we are far removed in our holiness, in our majesty, in our understanding, in our wisdom and virtue and knowledge and all of that from God. And he likens it to that until a man starts looking beyond himself to the Creator, it's as though he's essentially not blinded by the light of the knowledge because he's reflecting on how bright the sun is by looking down at the sun shining itself on a meadow of grass. What happens when man really discerns his problem before God is he stops looking at the sun's light and starts looking directly at the sun. And what does he realize? Oh man, that's brighter than anything I could imagine. And that's what Calvin connects to in the Old Testament, especially this Isaiah 6 moment. I don't know if he actually references Isaiah 6 particularly, but he gets at it in general. That man, upon self-examination, is gradually led by the hand to seek for God, but then when he actually finds him, the light is overwhelmingly blinding. We recognize how far removed we are. We recognize our own corruptions, our sin, our, in essence, vileness and darkness before the God of all creation. And like they would in the Old Testament, we saw the Lord and now we're going to die. What hope is there? Well, continue on with Calvin. Thanks for listening thus far. Hope that was of benefit. And I'll see you for chapter 2, continuing on in the knowledge of God. Thanks.